My name is Thomas, and I've lived a seemingly idyllic life with my wife Emily in a quaint suburban neighborhood in Ohio. We've been married for almost 20 years, and we have two wonderful children, Ethan and Lily, aged 14 and 12 respectively. Emily has always been the social butterfly, organizing neighborhood events and keeping our home a warm and welcoming place. She worked part-time as a nurse at the local hospital, balancing her job and her role as a mother with grace. I work as a software engineer, spending most of my days at a tech firm downtown. Our house, a cozy two-story with a well-kept garden, is where we made countless memories, from family barbecues to quiet evenings by the fireplace. Life seemed perfect, until recently, when the foundation of my world began to crack. Over the past few months, I noticed subtle changes in Emily's behavior. At first, I dismissed them, thinking she was just stressed from work or tired from managing the household. But the signs became too evident to ignore. Little did I know, these small changes were just the beginning of a revelation that would shatter my perception of our life together. It all started with Emily's sudden interest in her appearance. She had always been naturally beautiful, but lately, she was spending more time in front of the mirror. New clothes, makeup, even a change in her hairstyle. All of it seemed excessive for her part-time job and our quiet social life. She brushed off my comments with a laugh, saying she just wanted to feel good about herself. I wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling told me something was off. Emily also began receiving more texts and calls than usual. At first I thought it was her friends or her sister, but whenever I asked, she would quickly lock her phone and change the subject. Our conversations, once filled with warmth and laughter, had become strained. She was often distracted, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. The intimacy we shared dwindled, and she grew distant, even hostile at times. I tried to rationalize her behavior. Maybe she was going through a midlife crisis, or perhaps there was trouble at work she didn't want to burden me with. But then, she started going out more frequently. Girls' nights, shopping trips, even late-night shifts at the hospital. Each time she left, a part of me grew more suspicious. I would sit by the window, watching her car disappear down the street, wondering where she was really going and who she was with. The tipping point came when I found a hotel receipt in her purse while looking for a pen. It was from a luxury hotel downtown, dated on a night she had claimed to be working a double shift. My heart raced as I stared at the evidence of her deceit. Confronting her immediately would have been impulsive, but I needed answers. I decided to play along, gathering more proof before making any accusations. The tension between us grew, an invisible wall building higher with each passing day. Emily seemed oblivious to my growing unease, or perhaps she was just a skilled actress. I began to watch her closely, noting every inconsistency, every suspicious act. Late-night phone calls that she took in the garage, unexplained absences, and a certain glow about her whenever she returned home. It was like she was living a double life, and I was determined to uncover the truth. It wasn't just the physical signs that troubled me. There was an emotional distance, a coldness that had crept into our relationship. Emily used to confide in me about everything, from her fears and dreams to her daily frustrations. Now, our conversations were superficial, limited to mundane topics like bills and groceries. She avoided eye contact, her laughter hollow and forced. The woman I had fallen in love with seemed like a stranger, and it broke my heart to think that I might have lost her to someone else. I started to piece together a timeline, comparing her explanations with the gaps in her story. There were too many coincidences, too many lies that didn't add up. The nights she claimed to be working late were often followed by unexplained withdrawals from our bank account. Expensive dinners, flowers, and even a piece of jewelry that I had never seen her wear. It was clear that she was hiding something, and my worst fears were slowly being confirmed. Ethan and Lily began to sense the tension too. They would glance between us during dinner, their young faces filled with confusion and worry. I tried to keep things normal for their sake, but it was hard to hide the growing rift between Emily and me. She seemed to notice their concern but made little effort to reassure them. Instead, she immersed herself in her phone or retreated to our bedroom, leaving me to answer their unspoken questions with weak smiles and reassurances. The breaking point came one Friday evening when Emily announced she was going to a conference out of town for the weekend. She packed a small bag, kissed the kids goodbye, and left without a backward glance. As soon as her car was out of sight, I felt a mixture of relief and resolve. This was my chance to find out what was really going on. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I decided to follow her, determined to catch her in the act. With a heavy heart and a mind clouded by dread, I set off on a path that would ultimately uncover the betrayal I had feared. I waited for about an hour after Emily left before I grabbed my coat and keys. I had no clear plan, just a burning need to find out where she was going and who she was meeting. My hands trembled as I drove, my thoughts racing faster than the car. I followed the directions to the hotel whose receipt I had found in her purse, praying that I was wrong, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. The city lights blurred as I navigated through the traffic, my mind replaying every moment of doubt, every sign I had ignored. I arrived at the hotel, parked my car, and watched the entrance from a distance. My heart pounded as I scanned the faces of those coming and going, looking for Emily's familiar silhouette. After what felt like an eternity, I saw her. She emerged from a cab, looking more radiant than ever in a dress I had never seen before. My stomach churned as I watched her walk toward the hotel entrance with a man by her side. He was tall, well-dressed, and unmistakably familiar. It was Mark, one of her colleagues from the hospital. The sight of them together was like a punch to the gut. They laughed and chatted, completely oblivious to my presence. My heart shattered as I saw Mark place his hand on the small of her back, guiding her inside with a familiarity that spoke volumes. I felt a wave of nausea, but forced myself to follow them discreetly. The hotel lobby was busy, which helped me blend in as I trailed them to the elevator. They entered the elevator and I watched as the doors closed. I quickly checked the floor indicator and noted they were heading to the top floor. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more painful than the last. I waited for a moment before taking the next elevator up, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached the top floor, I stepped out into a quiet, dimly lit hallway. I moved silently, listening for any sign of them. As I rounded a corner, I saw them again, standing outside a suite. Emily was leaning against the wall, her face tilted up towards Mark, who was whispering something in her ear. She laughed softly, a sound that used to be meant only for me. I was close enough to hear their conversation now. Mark's voice was low and intimate. "I've missed you so much, Emily. These past few weeks have been torture." "I've missed you too," Emily replied, her voice breathy and filled with longing. "I'm so glad we have this weekend together." I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped forward, my anger and betrayal driving me. "Emily?" They both turned to face me, shock and guilt written across Emily's face. Mark took a step back, his expression hardening. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I spat, my eyes locked on Emily. "How long has this been going on?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Instead, she looked away, shame evident in her posture. Mark, however, stepped forward, trying to place himself between us. "This isn't what it looks like," he began, but I cut him off. "Don't you dare lie to me," I growled. "I've seen the messages, the receipts. How could you do this to me, Emily? To our family?" Emily finally met my gaze, her tears spilling over. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I never meant for you to find out this way." "You never meant for me to find out at all," I snapped. "What did you think would happen? That you could keep sneaking around behind my back forever?" Mark reached for Emily's hand, but she pulled away, looking torn and conflicted. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. I felt so alone, and Mark was there for me." The rage and pain boiling inside me were too much to bear. "Alone? You think that justifies this?" I shouted, gesturing wildly between the two of them. "You think this is how you fix feeling alone?" Before I could say anything more, Mark grabbed my shoulder, trying to push me away from Emily. "You need to leave, Thomas. You're not thinking clearly." I shoved him off, my fury giving me strength. "Don't touch me. You have no right to tell me anything." Emily stepped between us, her hands up in a placating gesture. "Please, Thomas, let's just talk about this. Not here, not like this." I looked at her, feeling a mixture of love and hatred. How could she have done this to me, to us? "There's nothing left to talk about," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice, Emily. Now you have to live with it." With that, I turned and walked away, the pain in my chest almost unbearable. I didn't look back, even as I heard Emily calling my name. I couldn't face her. Not after what I'd seen, not after the betrayal I'd just uncovered. My world had been turned upside down, and nothing would ever be the same again. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage. My mind was a storm of memories, each one tainted now by the knowledge of Emily's betrayal. Every laugh, every touch, every whispered, "I love you," felt like a cruel joke. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the initial shock had worn off, leaving a simmering fury in its place. I knew this wasn't over. Emily had a lot to answer for, and I was going to make sure she did. When I entered the house, Ethan and Lily were in the living room, their eyes glued to the TV. They looked up as I walked in, sensing the tension immediately. "Hey, Dad," Ethan said cautiously. "Where's Mom?" "She'll be home later," I replied, forcing a smile. "You guys finish up your homework?" "Yeah," Lily answered, her eyes searching my face for clues. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "Why don't you two head upstairs? It's getting late." They exchanged worried glances but did as I asked, their footsteps echoing up the stairs. I collapsed onto the couch, running my hands through my hair, trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. Emily walked in, her face a mask of fear and uncertainty. "Thomas, please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I stood up, barely able to contain my anger. "Talk? Now you want to talk? After everything?" "Yes," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I need to explain." "Explain?" I roared, my voice echoing through the house. "You think there's anything you can say to make this better? How long has this been going on, Emily? How long have you been lying to me?" She flinched at the volume of my voice, but I didn't care. I was beyond caring. "A few months," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "It started when you began working late. I felt so alone, Thomas." "You felt alone?" I repeated, incredulous. "So you thought the solution was to jump into bed with Mark? To destroy our family?" "It wasn't like that," she insisted, her tears falling freely now. "It just happened. I never meant to hurt you." "Well, you did," I snapped. "You hurt me, you hurt the kids, and for what? A fling? Some excitement?" "It wasn't just a fling," she cried. "Mark, he made me feel special. He listened to me. He understood." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "So what am I, Emily? What have I been doing all these years? Working my ass off to provide for this family, listening to your every need, supporting you in everything? Was that not enough?" "It's not about you," she sobbed. "It's about me. I was unhappy and I didn't know how to tell you." "So you thought cheating was the answer?" I spat. "You thought betraying me was the way to solve your unhappiness?" "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "A terrible mistake. But I love you, Thomas. I still love you." "Love?" I shouted, my anger flaring again. "You call this love? Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed us, Emily. You've destroyed everything." She sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Thomas, please don't leave me. I can't lose you. I can't lose our family." I stared at her, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and a deep, profound sadness. This was the woman I had loved for nearly 2 decades, the mother of my children, and she had shattered my heart into a million pieces. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the wreckage of our life. "You already have," I said quietly, the weight of the words hanging in the air. "You've already lost me, Emily." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her crumpled on the floor, her sobs echoing through the house. I didn't look back, didn't offer any comfort. She didn't deserve it, not after what she had done. As I walked upstairs to the guest room, I felt a cold numbness settle over me. This was my new reality, and I had to find a way to live in it, for myself and for my children. The next few days were a blur of silent meals and tense interactions. Emily tried to reach out, but I ignored her, unable to face her lies and deceit. The kids sensed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. Not yet. I needed time to process, to figure out what the next steps would be. But one thing was certain. Our marriage was over, and there was no going back. I spent the following days in a fog of anger and betrayal, my every thought consumed by Emily's infidelity. Each time I saw her, my mind replayed the scene in that hotel hallway. her words echoing in my head like a broken record. I couldn't stand to be near her, couldn't stomach the sight of her fake remorse. I knew I had to do something, something that would make her understand the depth of her betrayal. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at Emily's phone. She had left it on the counter, carelessly assuming I wouldn't dare touch it again. But this time, I wasn't looking for evidence. This time, I was looking for revenge. With a grim determination, I unlocked her phone, the familiar pattern etched into my memory from years of shared trust. I scrolled through her messages, finding the thread with Mark. The messages were as incriminating as ever, filled with sweet nothings and promises of a future together. My blood boiled as I read their words, my anger intensifying with each passing second. I knew what I had to do. I needed to make them pay. I started by taking screenshots of their conversations, making sure to capture the most damning messages. Then I crafted an email to Mark's wife, whom I had met a few times at hospital functions. I knew she deserved to know the truth, just as I had. With shaking hands, I attached the screenshots and composed a brief but devastating message. Dear Sarah, I am truly sorry to be the bearer of such painful news, but I believe you deserve to know the truth about your husband's actions. The attached screenshots are from his ongoing affair with my wife, Emily. Please understand that I am sharing this with you out of a sense of duty and a desire for honesty. You deserve to know the kind of man you are married to. Sincerely, Thomas. I hit send and felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as the email vanished into the ether. It was a small victory, but it was something. Next, I turned my attention to social media. Emily was active on Facebook and Instagram, her profiles filled with pictures of our family, her cheerful posts painting a perfect picture of our life. It was time to shatter that illusion. I logged into her Facebook account and began posting the screenshots to her timeline, along with a brief explanation of her betrayal. I made sure to tag Mark, ensuring that all their mutual friends would see the truth. The reaction was immediate. Comments and messages flooded in, a mix of shock, disbelief, and condemnation. I could only imagine the fallout this would cause for both Emily and Mark, but I didn't care. They had brought this upon themselves. When Emily finally discovered what I had done, her reaction was explosive. She stormed into the guest room, her face twisted in fury. "What the hell did you do, Thomas?" she screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "I did what needed to be done," I replied coldly. "You think you can destroy our family and just walk away unscathed? You think you can lie and cheat and there won't be consequences?" "You had no right!" she shrieked, her fists clenched at her sides. "This was between us, Thomas. You had no right to drag Mark and his family into this." "Mark made his choice when he decided to sleep with you," I shot back. "He deserves everything that's coming to him, and so do you." Emily's eyes blazed with hatred, but I could see the fear behind her anger. She knew I was right, knew that she had no defense. "You're a monster," she spat. "I can't believe I ever loved you." "Well, believe it," I said, my voice icy, "because this is the reality you created. Now you have to live with it." Emily stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sat back, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and despair. I had struck back, had made her feel a fraction of the pain she had caused me. But it didn't bring me the satisfaction I had hoped for. Instead, I felt hollow, the enormity of what I had done sinking in. The next morning, Emily was gone. She left a note on the kitchen table, a terse message saying she needed some time away. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't care. The kids were confused and hurt, but I did my best to reassure them, telling them that their mom just needed some time to think. It was a lie, but it was all I could manage. As the days passed, the fallout from my actions became clear. Mark's wife filed for divorce, their children caught in the crossfire of his betrayal. Emily's social media accounts were inundated with messages of support and condemnation, her perfect image shattered. She stayed away, her absence a painful reminder of the life we had lost. I knew I had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The path ahead was filled with uncertainty, the future of my family hanging in the balance. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had taken control, had reclaimed some measure of dignity. It was a small step, but it was the beginning of a new journey, one that I would face with the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself. Emily returned a week later. She looked exhausted, the weight of our fractured marriage and the public fallout visible in every line of her face. She entered the house quietly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled in her absence. The kids were at school, giving us the rare opportunity for an uninterrupted conversation. She found me in the living room, where I was sitting with a cup of coffee, trying to plan the next steps for our broken family. "Thomas," she said softly, standing in the doorway. "We need to talk." I nodded, gesturing for her to sit. She took a seat on the edge of the couch, looking more like a stranger than the woman I had shared my life with for so many years. There was an awkward silence before she spoke again. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know that doesn't begin to cover the hurt I've caused, but I am truly sorry for everything." I watched her, trying to gauge her sincerity. Sorry for cheating? Sorry for lying? Sorry for dragging Mark into our lives? I asked, my tone devoid of emotion. Or sorry that you got caught? Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I'm sorry for all of it. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you and the kids. I don't know how to make it right." "You can't," I said bluntly. "You shattered our trust, our family. There's no going back from that." "I know," she whispered, wiping away a tear. "But I want to try. I want to make amends, to find a way to move forward." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "Moving forward doesn't mean pretending this never happened, Emily. It means facing the consequences of your actions." She nodded, a look of determination crossing her face. "I understand. I want to take responsibility for what I did. I want to go to counseling, both individually and together, if you're willing. I know it's a lot to ask, but I want to fight for our family." Her words hung in the air, filled with a desperate hope that I couldn't ignore. But I knew that my decision couldn't be based solely on her remorse. I had to consider what was best for me and the kids. "Counseling might help," I conceded. "But it won't change the fact that you betrayed me. Trust is something that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. And right now, I don't trust you." She flinched at my words, but didn't argue. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, even if it takes the rest of my life." I looked at her, seeing the depth of her regret, but also knowing that regret alone wouldn't heal the wounds she had caused. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I admitted. "But for the sake of our children, I'm willing to try. We'll go to counseling, but there are no guarantees. This is going to be a long, hard road." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you for giving me a chance." We sat in silence for a few moments, both of us lost in our thoughts. Finally, I spoke again. "There's one more thing we need to address. Your relationship with Mark. It has to end. Completely. No contact. No excuses." She nodded vehemently. "It's already over. I blocked him on everything. I told him it was a mistake, and that I want to fix my marriage. He won't be a problem anymore." "Good," I said, feeling a slight sense of relief. "Because if I ever find out that you're still in contact with him, we're done. No second chances." "I understand," she said, her eyes full of sincerity. "I promise you, Thomas, I will do everything I can to make this right." I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation settle heavily on my shoulders. "I need some time," I said. "Time to process all of this and decide if I can even begin to forgive you. We'll start counseling, but you need to know that this is your last chance. You break my trust again, and it's over." Emily stood as well, looking at me with a mixture of hope and fear. "I won't let you down," she said. "I promise." As she left the room, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time. The possibility of healing. It was a small, fragile hope, but it was there. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and painful memories. But for the sake of our children, and maybe even for the sake of our past love, I was willing to try. That night, I lay awake, thinking about our conversation and the future that lay ahead. I knew that forgiveness wouldn't come easily, and that trust would be even harder to rebuild. But in the quiet darkness of our home, I made a decision. I would fight for my family, just as I had promised. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to piece together the shattered fragments of our lives. Months passed since the tumultuous confrontation, and while life was far from perfect, a semblance of normalcy began to return. The counseling sessions were grueling and filled with raw, painful emotions. Emily and I both bared our souls, confronting our deepest fears and insecurities. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments when I wondered if it was worth the effort. But slowly, a fragile sense of understanding began to grow between us. The kids, Ethan and Lily, adapted to the changes with remarkable resilience. They noticed the effort we were making and appreciated the stability it brought. We made a conscious effort to spend more quality time together as a family, movie nights, weekend outings, and long conversations that reinforced our bond. It wasn't always smooth, but it was progress. Emily was true to her word. She cut all ties with Mark and focused on rebuilding her relationship with me and the children. Her remorse was genuine, and her actions spoke louder than her words. She attended individual therapy sessions to work on her issues, and we continued our joint counseling to rebuild trust. It was a long, arduous journey, but we were both committed to seeing it through. As for me, I found solace in new routines and hobbies. I started running again, something I had abandoned during the darkest days of our marriage. It became a therapeutic escape, allowing me to clear my mind and process my emotions. I also reconnected with old friends, rebuilding a support network that I hadn't realized I needed. Work became a refuge as well. I poured myself into my projects, finding satisfaction in the challenges and successes that came my way. My colleagues noticed the change in me, and I began to receive recognition for my efforts. It was a reminder that I was capable, strong, and worthy of respect, something I had doubted in the wake of Emily's betrayal. One evening, after a particularly grueling counseling session, Emily and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The silence between us was comfortable, a stark contrast to the tension that had once defined our interactions. "Do you think we'll ever be truly happy again?" Emily asked softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I considered her question, weighing my words carefully. "I think happiness is a choice we have to make every day," I replied. "It's not about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about deciding to move forward, to find joy in the present and hope in the future." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm willing to keep trying if you are." "One day at a time," I said, reaching for her hand. "That's all we can do." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, our relationship continued to evolve. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but there were also breakthroughs and moments of genuine connection. We learned to communicate more openly, to share our fears and dreams without fear of judgment. The road to healing was long, but we walked it together, supporting each other every step of the way. Reflecting on the journey, I realized that Emily's infidelity, as devastating as it was, had forced us to confront issues that had been festering for years. It made us reevaluate our priorities, our communication, and our commitment to each other. In the end, it was a painful catalyst for growth and change. Our new life wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was built on a foundation of honesty, resilience, and a shared determination to make things work. We were different people now, shaped by our experiences and strengthened by our struggles. As I looked at Emily, I saw a woman who had made mistakes, but who was also willing to fight for our family. And in her eyes, I saw a reflection of myself, a man who had been broken, but who had found the strength to rebuild. Together, we faced an uncertain future with hope and determination. We knew there would be challenges ahead, but we were ready to face them, hand in hand. Our story wasn't over, it was just beginning, and this time we were writing it together, one day at a time.